What's up everyone, my name is Rosendo, welcome back to my channel. We are back with another video, and today we have another track breakdown for all of you. The track breakdown that might be the last one in a while, not last one, but there's not going to be a track breakdown for another while after this, because we have a casual laid back video today. Track breakdown, not me, us, out on all platforms. Came out about last week, breaking it down today so you can get it the week after. Sorry, actually it just came out on Friday. I think it just came in on Friday, and you guys are getting this the week after. I know you guys got a few track reviews already. You got plenty more coming in because my next track, I'm aiming for a March release date, which means I need to finish it in like the next week or two. And it's possible. I don't know if that's gonna happen yet. But again, laid back video today. Hopefully my mic is not buzzing. I know I haven't been having that issue recently, or kind of a really bad audio buffering. If it is, you guys probably are not seeing this video. If you guys are seeing this video, then the issue is either not there, because as I mentioned last time I did this, I had to go into my BIOS like 3 times and do a bunch of stuff with my computer. So if it's not there, awesome. If it's only there a little bit, I'll take it. If it's there a lot, then I'm recording this for nothing and you guys will not see this. But that's beside the point, because again, I haven't done a track breakdown in a while. I think the last one was City of Rain. That's when FL Studio and Audacity and OBS are all open. That's when my computer decides that it doesn't like what I'm doing. And it's actually getting kind of old. I've been thinking about upgrading or replacing it. Hopefully upgrading, but you know, we'll see in this PC economy. But the point is, with the track reviews, since I only have Spotify and OBS and Audacity open, it's fine. FL Studio throws some hiccups into things. If the audio is not clicking, which I already tested it a little bit, I was having issues. I updated another driver. Now it looks like it's fine. We'll see. We will see. But again, I really hope it's fine, because I thought it was fixed. It wasn't. And now I think it is again. But we are breaking down Not Me, Us today. Hopping into FL Studio for the track review. Make sure to like and subscribe. But without further ado, let's hop into FL Studio. All right, we are back in FL Studio with another track breakdown, this time taking a look at Not Me, Us. What I have decided to kind of phrase as an old school trance with a personal approach. That's kind of the motto of this track. Old school trance with a personal approach, because that's exactly what we're doing here. This track was made, so let's talk about trance. Well, first of all, track overview. I'm looking at it right now, and it actually looks a little bit simpler than I thought. But it's not simple necessarily. It's a nice track. A little bit quick, 16 hours, 43 minutes, started in 2025 in the spring, right around there. And we are looking at over here, these patterns, 48 mixer tracks. Not a big project file by any means. My next one's coming out pretty big, and it's turning out to be a really hard project, although I think I'm getting close to the end. But here we have a Not Me. Now, when it comes to me and trance, we have Understanding. We have, if you saw Understanding, I talked about how I almost scrapped Understanding and tried to make another trance track, which actually I was going through some of my videos, and I never ended up releasing that track because I forgot what video. I mentioned it kind of sporadically in a few videos, but if you go to the intro outro mistake video, you'll actually get a sneak peek of that trance track. But at this point, this is what I'm going to call my third trance track, because my first one was Understanding, second one is an ID still, which I actually think I've remembered I was hoping to release this year, maybe in September. We'll see if that happens. But this is basically track number 3, track number 2 of my discography, which is old school trance, because around this time, probably around the time when, well, I released Understanding, and around the spring and summer, I was working on that new ID track, and I was really getting into trance. I mentioned how trance is kind of like more of a summer type of genre. So I actually haven't listened to it all that much, but around the summer, I was really working on this track. I did a few fun things with it, and again, old school trance kind of inspiration, particularly with this, which actually was inspired by my Greenlight remix, because I remember when I was making the ID trance track that I haven't finished was just so hard and complex. Not really in arrangement, it actually kind of was. It was just hard to get right, because I was trying to make it super full and complete. When then sometimes I'll be listening to trance tracks, old school trance tracks, it's just a kick and like a square or a sine. Actually, I don't even know what this is. A sine, a square, and a kick and a sine wave on the bass line. And I thought, man, it could just be a lot simpler. And especially when I released my Greenlight remix, when I saw that my bass was also just one pattern, I thought, man, you know, I was kind of kicking myself so hard for the ID trance track, and I thought I can make a trance track so much simpler, you know, and maybe just kind of lean into that old school trance feel. And that's exactly what I did, giving us this. it's just there. There's your low end of the track. Very old school feel with a kick and a bass line. So that's kind of how this track started. It started with an inspiration of old school trance tracks and really just kind of leaning into that. I knew at the end of the day it was just going to be whatever came out of me. So it wasn't kind of meant to be okay, this is going to be an old school trance track. It's just, hey, let's start with this. Let's just make it feel a little bit more nostalgic, if you will. And let's just see what comes out of me. Especially if I want to do something like add some lyrics, some splice vocals that I just wanted to mess around with. So how did I start this track? How did this track come to be? Again, I was just messing around. The hard part about this is I didn't really have any vocal ideas or anything planned. So I start with this. This wasn't the bass line. These weren't the chords. But if we just mute the vocals, I actually think the first thing I started with was this, which I have no clue why I called it acid. It's more of a kind of an atmospheric tone. It's a sequence, but I think it might have started as an acid sound and then I switched it to this and I never changed the name of the pattern. But this is what you start with. So the track kind of started with this and probably some different chords, but let's just start here for instance. I mean, this is pretty much what you start with. Let's mute this. This is pretty much what you start with right here. And you add some this, you add some claps, and you kind of just start building a beat, although these weren't the chords. And I'm making the track and I think, again, it's just these sounds just kind of came to me. Okay, old school trance, kick, bass, let me find an acid or a sequence or a pattern. I threw this in, and then you just throw the pad in, of course, and you start kind of building a track. You get a melody that, kind of just sounds like, give me 1 second. You get a melody that just kind of sounds like this, super simple, just hit one note. Very, resembles a lot of my understanding melody, if you saw that. Pretty much the same thing. And you just kind of build a track. Anyways, where do we get the actual track idea? The actual track idea comes from splice vocals. Now, this is another area where I got to talk about splice vocals because we're dealing with number 1 is Call, number 2 is this track, number 3 my next track as well, which gets really, really interesting and a little bit more, actually really quite artistic with what I do with the vocals. Here it's more about you're adding them, and the character that you add here is, well, number 1, the actual vocals, but the idea that goes in my head is, are splice vocals cheating? Are AI vocals cheating? Does it count? Does it take away from the art? Blah, 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 blah. But the way I like to look at it is, it doesn't really matter if you use splice vocals because what you do with the track ultimately matters. And if you use splice vocals and you use, random splice samples and you don't do something meaningful with them, maybe it does take away from the track a little bit. But the general idea here is, okay, I wanted to make an old school trance track. I knew I wanted to add vocals into it. So it becomes more of this thing of, let me add vocals into it. Let me build a track around vocals. And A, let me do something unique with it. But B, the main kind of but kind of the main idea and goal here was demonstrating what I could do with vocals. Because a few things happened around the time I made this track. I finished my Expression EP. I started work on understanding of slow VIP, One Way or Another, Night, and a few things. And around this time in my producer journey, I start thinking and wondering to myself, I'm really ready to work with some vocals and kind of write songs and write the melodies and write lyrics and just kind of add them to my tracks. Right now I have two or three track ideas that are, I want to add vocals too, but I don't have a vocalist. I can't sing myself. I haven't really dabbled enough with kind of technology out there to generate the vocals if I wanted to, because some of them are easy, some of them are not easy. So the thing is, sometimes I want to add vocals to my track, and I know I can make a good track with vocals, but I just don't have the resources to do so right now. So the goal with this track is, okay, I'm ready to add vocals to my tracks, but I don't have the resources, so let me demonstrate what I could do if I had vocals. And I found this vocal pack that the lyrics are, okay, I don't hate the lyrics, but it had a lot of ad-libs and harmonies that it was my way of demonstrating, okay, if I had the ability to kind of make a track full with vocals, this is what it might look like. So even though I'm just using a splice vocal, which again, I don't hate, I don't love, it is what it is at the end of the day. The idea was just to demonstrate my skill, my intuition, or just kind of my instinct of what I could do had I had a vocalist that could generate, harmonies and lyrics and ad-libs and all that stuff, and put it in a track just to demonstrate my ability to use vocals. So that's what happened. That's how this track came to be. It essentially started with me just making, I don't remember what the original chords were. Actually, I think I do, but that's not important. I had, a bass line, some chords, a few other things. And then I went through the vocals and I decided, okay, now is my time to build a track around vocals and show what would happen if I just started with a vocal sample, had an idea of some sounds, and decided to build a whole track around this vocal sample, which is when I changed I don't know if I changed the kick. I changed the bass notes, I changed the chords, and I started building the track and the pattern around these vocals, which gives us Not Me, Us vocals in pink, which if I think in my last video, my last breakdown, probably City of Rain, I mentioned that I put my vocals in pink. So you guys can see a little bit new color here. This project file is a little bit unorganized. You can see not everything's color coded. There's not a lot of groups and stuff, which as a reminder, and this will be important for my next track breakdown, I've said in the past that the less organized a project file is, the easier it came to me, and the more I just kind of placed things and it fell together really nicely. And the more I organized it, the harder it was to get right. So the fact that you see, effects down here and some other vocal and some melodies in here, but the effects blended with the vocals, patterns and chords and buses that aren't color coded, just means that this was a pretty easy track to make. And last thing I'll say before we get into the tier list, I'm already thinking ahead. Before we get into the breakdown, is if you saw my tier list of 2025, I mentioned that I really like this track. I'd probably consider this an A+ track because although it's not as artistic or narrationally intentional as some of my other tracks, it just really hits the emotion. I mean, first of all, you get 138. I mentioned how in the Understanding track breakdown, I wasn't really a fan of the ones. I think I actually mentioned it in the discography breakdown of either this year or last year. Probably this year because Understanding wasn't out. I mentioned how the 128 kind of makes the track take a hit. So we just committed to the 138, right? Has some sounds I really like. It just hits the emotional spot so hard, at least subjectively, and I recognize that it is subjective, that I just absolutely love this track. I would consider it A tier. And we have an old school trance track for the winter that we are finally going to break down. Not Me, Us. Let's get into the breakdown. All right, so let's do it. Because what do we start with? You guys have already heard. When you first listen to the track, what do you get? You get drums, a bass, and some chords, right? A little bit more of a full track to start with. But again, you want it to be a little bit more full, a little bit more active, if you will. Old school trance. Okay, now there's actually one thing I need to mention because I completely forgot about this. So, if you're noticing anything weird about how the let me play the first two bars. First three. Okay, there's one thing I do need to defend myself in because I completely forgot about this. If you're noticing anything weird about how the intro of the track starts, and then I promise we'll actually break the track down, something about this sequence right here, I might just rename it actually. It'll make things easier. Sequence. That should be the only pattern in there. Something weird about this sequence right here, or maybe the bass notes or something, just feels off key. And I will say three small things about it that probably aren't important. Number one, I recognize that it sounds off key. But the thing is, when I was making this track and I just threw this in there, which is, what are we in F sharp? F, we're in F, which is in F minor here, which is in F, is that it always sounded kind of off key to me. And I didn't know why, because I didn't double check. I checked everything 6 times over. And I convinced myself that it wasn't off key or off pitch because I checked everything. But this part always sounded strange to me, the first 4 beats. And then once you got to the second bar, it just kind of fell into place. And I know it's weird because the key is an F, but we don't even have the tonic in the bass line at all. The chords are, what are they? Something over here that don't really matter. I mean, we can look at here. G sharp, D, it doesn't matter. The point is it always sounded off pitch, but it always sounded like it corrected itself right into the second bar. And then for the rest of the track, it sounded fine. But I always told myself I would go back to this and be like, okay, let me see if I can correct the first bar so it doesn't sound off pitch. And then, I'll do that later though. Let me just finish the track and get it out of the way. And then I was finishing the track, I was working on the track, and my ears got so used to it that I completely forgot I was supposed to go back in and touch it because I just got so used to how it sounded until literally not the day of release, a week before release when I uploaded it on my socials to kind of, put it out there and be like, hey, pre-save. My friend messaged me and he was like, hey, isn't that off pitch? And I'm like, oh my gosh, I completely forgot to to try to fix that. So what I was saying is, number one, I recognize it might sound off pitch. Number two, it kind of fixes itself once you let the chorus play out. And number three, I tracked this like 8 times, 10 times over. And if you guys see anything I don't, let me know. Sub octave fine tuning might make it sound a little bit strange. Octave -1. Here we have 3 semitones on the third oscillator. I don't know if there's any pitch bending here. Maybe there's something. What is this? Filter 1 frequency, C semi. So this is oscillating a little bit, which might make it sound weird. Sub level, a bunch of other things. But the biggest thing I notice here is that this is set to 3 semitones up, and we're in F minor here. So F 1, 2, 3, that puts you at G, right? It shouldn't sound off pitch. 1, 2, yeah, I'm checking it for probably the 11th time now. It shouldn't be off key. It sounds like it is. I might be missing something. It could be the sweeping of the I don't know. The point is, I listened to it just now and I realized, okay, it sounds strange again. Now that I remembered that it does sound strange, but we can ignore that because after this, it kind of falls into the key of the track and it's fine for the rest of the track. Anyways, us starting now with kick, bass line, pad, and the sequence. We'll break down the elements because I'm going to do that again. There you go. Kick. Nice kick there. Bass line. Again, super nice old school trance type bass where it's really just a sine wave on notes, on chords that effectively follow the vocals we'll introduce later with your pad. Probably coming out of Serum 2. Ooh, Spire. Nice. Spire pad here. I'm not going to bother to find it, but I'm going to need to remember to favor this. Gradient. Actually, I don't want to change anything. Nice pad out of Spire here. And, of course, your sequence. Very wet. Alright, so let's actually get into the listening experience now. Second bar, third bar, fourth bar. Let's go through these because not too many things we want to go over. Only thing we add here are some drums into your hi-hats clap. Nice drums, nice clap here. Did I put reverb on the clap? Probably not. The whole thing has a reverb bus on it. Let's get this hi-hat and then we'll isolate the drums because why not? Into a reverse into our melody with some crashes. Which, if you heard the track, you'll know this melody is the melody of the vocals. Nice pluck on there, though. And that pretty much makes up your intro, and we'll break down the elements. Vocal notes. Really nice pluck. This has to be Serum 2. Oh, it's a lead, but probably with a little bit of a filter on it. I wonder what happens if we... Nice. Alright, nice effects here. Sequence stays the same. We have some drums, which we'll break down in a second, and your pad stays the same. Let's break down the drums. Drums for the track. So there's definitely reverb on there. FabFilter Pro R. Now, one thing I will mention about this track that I think gives it a lot of character is... when did I start? This track came out in January, so I must have uploaded for distribution December. Around November, almost annually, I do some Black Friday shopping, Cyber Monday shopping, and I added some nice, cool things to my tool belt. Last year I didn't do any, but this year I did add a lot of cool, fun things to my tool belt, to my toolkit, I should say. Incredible plugin. I remember my first compressor was the C2, and I actually don't regret it because the C2 I still reach for a lot of times because it's just like it's your workhorse, right? You want to compress something, put a C2 on it. FabFilter Pro C2. And then I always knew I kind of was like, I should get an 1176 at one point. I got one, and A, I love it, but B, it added so much character to this track that I didn't even imagine, and especially because it's an old school trance track, it worked wonders. So there you go, 1176 plug right here. Compression and a little bit of color. I really hope this wasn't me. There's no way this was muted. No, there's absolutely no way. There's absolutely no way I exported this muted because At some point, I'm going to double check the project file. And if I'll put in post here, if I remember to check if it was muted or not. Although if it was muted, I'm going to forget to check and I won't put anything. Or maybe I just will genuinely forget to check and I won't put anything. There's no way this was muted. Anyways, before, after. Nice color, nice compression. It's on a lot of things, actually. I just kind of blindly put it on everything at one point just because, I mean, sure, it makes it sound awesome. Synths have it, which we'll hear later. Leads have it, which we'll hear later. And I don't think the vocals do. But that's fine. So synths, drums, and leads all have an 1176, giving this track awesome color. Basses don't because it's really just one bass. There's another like kind of bass sequence later, but I don't really feel the need to. It looks like I did compress it a little bit, just to get some transients out of there. But no 1176 on the bass. Anyways, back to the track because we're still at the intro. Let's fast forward a little bit. Pay close attention. Now, the only real thing I can say about this area is it just felt right. And that's what I love about this track. It feels right. It's a little bit unique. It switches it up. And something about 4 beats didn't feel right here. Something about 8 beats didn't feel right here. I think there was a point where I had like 3 or something. I don't know. I experimented with a few options. But 6 beats, it just felt so right, so natural. And just kind of almost fun enough to switch it up and give you something just a little bit more unique. And I got so used to it that my brain doesn't even process that it sounds off now. So again, the first time you hear this, you might be kind of caught off guard, but it just sounds right. There's something else we do that actually I'll probably have to... I don't think I'm recording anything in here, so I'll be able to open the other project file, but I'll go into that later. So yeah, 6 beats, switch up. It just felt right. So that's the beauty of A, kind of going by feel here, and B, allowing yourself to be a little bit artistic and not play by the rules. Giving you your vocals. Very soft reverse into it just because I want the vocals to kind of catch you off guard. I don't want to kind of swell into them super dramatically. I want it to kind of be a surprise, as if you're listening to my discography in order and realizing that you haven't had vocals since Call. Unless you listen to my remixes. But you haven't had vocals since Call, September, I want to say, of 24. And now we're in January 26. Giving you your splice vocals of the track. Let's isolate them.
Hear me, I'm calling. Catch me, I'm falling. Oh, please stay.
Those are your splice vocals. It looks like they double up.
Catch me, I'm falling.
That is important, actually, because it changes a little bit. And those are your splice vocals of the track. One thing, 2 things. Number one, again, I started the track idea and then I found the vocals and then I built the whole track around it. So the whole track was changed and built around these vocals. And the other thing is, the thing about the splice pack I got, I don't even remember where I got it from. I mean, you can see it right here. But the thing about the splice pack that I got it from is that it included a bunch of ad-libs for the same ones. So it really allowed me to experiment with layers and effects and harmonies and things like that allow you to really get creative with these vocals, something that I would be able to do if I had a vocalist, but since I don't, I'm not able to. But again, it's meant to demonstrate, hey, this pack allowed me to include everything I could imagine, not everything I could imagine, but most things that I could imagine if I had a vocalist. So let's get creative with them. You do a lot of cool things over here, but even in your verses, you are left with this. A little bit of an effect here, probably delay and other things. Reverb delay. And on ascend, basically. Giving you your vocals of the track. Again, don't love him, don't hate him. I like him. I do like him, or else I wouldn't have chosen him. But those are your splice vocals. When I say I don't hate him, I mean, when I say I don't love him, that means that I probably wouldn't have written vocals that go like this, but doesn't mean I wouldn't use them. 2 pads, sidechain, mandatory to give you that pumping effect. First intro pad, this one might be a little bit more detuned. Very nice. Saturation, nice chorus on you as well. Together working really well. You're gonna get the vocal notes in a second with your hi-hats in a second. The sidechain really bumping. Drums pan to the center. Off center? They sound off center, but they're not. Maybe just a little bit. Into your build-up. Now your vocal notes play right here. You actually get a little bit of like a bass note in there, and some well, yeah, you got this, and you got some bass note arps in here, which I forgot to mention. Over here, you do get that lower note, and some chords. This is the intro now, and some chords right here to switch up the melody. Nice character in it. Nice character in it. Over here. Let's play them with the vocals, why not?
Hear me, I'm calling. Catch me, I'm falling. Oh, please stay.
Really nice.
Stay with me tonight.
Actually, I really like that.
Hear me tonight.
What a nice track. Into your leads. As you can see, less is more. This is old school trance at the end of the day. So 2 lead layers. One that gives you almost everything, and then one that I just found that I liked. I know I wanted to add a layer, and I thought, you know, what do I add if I want to keep it minimalistic? You just add one that I really, really like. That just gives it some character. Starting with your main. What I believe I used in understanding, what I think I tried to use in my ID. I do really like this Spire preset for trance, I will say. Allows you to automate the cutoff, which I don't believe I did, and give you some really cool effects. And your second layer that I really like. No clue where I found this. This might even be a, okay, got it. Out of Serum 2, out of a pack that I got. But really nice, it's like vocally. You can hardly hear it, but it just adds enough character to it. Right here. You hear it a lot right here for some reason. And then, when I say old school trance with a personal approach, by the way, for some reason, I don't know how I came across this one and chose it, but I really like the rhythm it adds. If we're talking progression and variation of rhythm, adds great rhythm not only here, but over here, it adds fantastic rhythm. And again, you just get creative with the vocals, where you get your standard, what to me is like your basic standard trance melody pluck. Let's solo. Into what I call old school trance with a personal approach, because if you saw, if my ID hasn't come out yet, but I still consider it a part of tracks I've made, where you get a much more uplifting trance track that, and a lot of times uplifting trance tracks have that rolling bass line, in the lead have that kind of tone, what I'm going to call a rolling, not necessarily a pedal tone. That's what I call like a mid-rolling bass line on top of it, which is essentially what you do right here. You fill in the gaps with, what are we filling it in with? Probably, this is not the root note. I have no clue what I filled it in with. Let's see, because, a note that sounded good. Right here, it looks like all of them we have a third under whatever we're playing. Except for this one. But I also don't think these are the bass notes, because we have C. Are they the bass notes? Yeah, they're not the bass notes. So we just fill it up with harmonies of the actual melody, which you'll see in uplifting trance. So they either do it with the bass notes, they'll do it with the actual note of the melody, or some harmony, a third or a fifth of it, which is what we do here. Old school trance with personal approach, adding the uplifting trance rolling bass line on it. Giving it a much more kind of a consistent feel. Take it away before the build-up. But we don't really change this, I believe. Let's see, vocal melody, vocal chant, vocal thing. Okay, so we do change it a little bit. Not sure how. It is the same, so I'm not sure what changed there. Oh, you remove like 2 notes. Yeah, you remove like 2 notes just for going into the buildup, going into the drop, but we will get to that. Uplifting trance style melody. Probably the sequence comes back. No risers. I'll take it. I'm not a fan of risers anyways. Some sweep on the high pass on the chords though. The biggest thing we do is, again, we drop these chords, we sweep it a little bit. You get some, again, we increase the reverb on the leads, but you just switch it up a little bit by taking away the rolling lead here on the rolling bass, we'll call it, on the lead, and you just kind of chop it up again, because you'll notice we go from less chopped to more chopped to less chopped and down an octave. So the leads have nice movement, which is why we get where we are right here, but then we slow it down a little bit into our drop. And again, something just felt right about it, right? You're getting a drop that's just supposed to feel a little bit more like you're going with it, not super high uplifting energy, not super slow, non-trance energy, but you get your drums, you get your bass, you get your pad, you get your hi-hats, your claps, and you get just a lower octave melody. A lower octave melody that just feels like it gives the track nice movement. Again, going by feel here, a little bit more artistic as well. Instead of, going into drop and then going boom, the trance drop. No, let's just get the movement going. Let's get the feel going. And let's just play around with the melodies. Giving you your melody, main melody number 1. Same thing you heard earlier, number 2. Probably just gives it a little bit more pluck. It also sounds pretty retro-y with the cutoff, It sounds a little more old school. Speaking of old school, in it preset. All 3 sounding like this. Let's go right here. $11.76 for the compression, a few other things, saturation knob, just blanket saturation on there. It looks like we compress it first and then we throw the 1176 on for color. What is this? Reverb. Valhalla Vintage Verb. Another fantastic buy out of my Black Friday spree. Echo Boy, another good buy. I do like this because I was getting by just fine with Fruity Delay 3. But I definitely was in need of a delay plugin. Altogether, you have this. Some reverb, some filter swells and some reverb swells, especially with this the second layer you heard right here. That does give it a lot of movement. Which, again, those are the leads on the drop. Synths, you have 0 synths. You do have the pad, which, again, to make the drop just feel a little bit different and to really emphasize the fact that it's going by feel here instead of being something big, you actually bring the pad down quite a bit. You see the balance and the levels basically come down on the pad, so that it kind of drops away when the drop hits, but it's still there, it's still present, it comes back in, but the emphasis is just on the feel, the leads, and just kind of, the atmosphere. Sorry about that. And just kind of the atmosphere. You'll hear the pad kind of go away. Some swells on the leads. Pad comes back just to be present in the drop. And this is where you are with the drop until we introduce a sequence and change the leads and the melody a little bit. And a rolling bass line, which I'm going to break down more over here. A sequence, I should say. Really like this melody, by the way. This trance melody is just so classic that I love it. But, a lot of old school trance melodies, they kind of jump all over the place. They have some nice intervals and they just kind of feel a little bit more memorable and feel a little bit more unique and just have a little bit more character, not sonically, but just the melodies itself has more, it feels like it has more of a character and a personality to it instead of just being this. A lot of recognizable trance melodies aren't really like that. They have some movement to it. They have some nice intervals, which is why you go by feel. You deliver exactly what you want in the first half of the drop, but then you move around a little bit. Should we solo? Let's not solo, but let's just listen to the melody together, and we'll probably have this open just so you can see it. Actually, we might solo, because I do think there are some different intervals and differences between the 2 melodies, if I remember correctly. There you go. So it's exactly the same with 1 interval difference. That's not the point. The point is, what are we listening to? We won't solo it, but let's really listen to that melody and have it open, because it sounds like this. Nice jumps. And again, nice movement to make it a little bit more memorable, to feel a little bit more old school. Giving you your second verse. Right there, bass sequence. Risers, drop the drums. Oh, and your Supersaws coming. Hi-hats are just alone. Oh, there's a lot to break down here. Let's listen to it because we have a lot to break down. Beautiful vocal harmonies. And here I was thinking this track would be a short breakdown. Number one, let's start with just the sequence because you do get this new element. Really nice bass line. Just gives it some more movement, some more feel, slightly more old school feel as well. Blah, blah, blah. Hi-hats do a really good job of adding your movement. That's the other thing. Actually, I will mention that because if you do listen to it, you know, you get the vocals and we'll go over the vocal harmonies in a second. I feel like this is the area where the track really hits a stride, where you really feel like, oh, you know, there's a lot, it's a lot more active and a lot more emotional to some extent. Listen for this hi-hat. Again, just keeps you moving forward. The panning comes in as well. Really moves it forward. Both pads are in. And two main things. We'll probably break this down first because this will be sustained more. You got vocal harmonies. Again, another demonstration of what could be possible if I worked with a vocalist, because I heard it in my head. I thought, you know what, right here, this needs harmonies. And lucky for me, the pack had harmonies. If it didn't have harmonies, I'd be on my luck. Which actually, if you saw the Greenlight remix, there was an area where I wanted to add harmonies as well, but I had to opt for a chorus, which I actually quite liked. But there was an area where I wanted to try harmonies. I tried a vocal doubler plug-in, and it didn't really turn out too well. But here, I was able to do exactly what I wanted to. More demonstration of what I could do if I had a vocalist. Because right here, beautiful area, especially with the Supersaws, with everything, with the hi-hats. Unfortunately, again, the harmonies for some reason in the sample drop right here. So I should say the harmonies drop right there. So what do? You fill it up with a swell, right? Because the harmonies are going to drop. But the other option is to add it with just kind of a, you know, a sustained vocal note, which is exactly what you do. Not pitched at all. So you got just a slightly different notes there. Vocals come back, harmonies come back, really to bring you to the next area. Especially with these Supersaws, which A, I love Supersaws, you know they're going to be in here, and B, comes back to the whole old school trance with the personal approach idea, which is A, I love Supersaws and I'm going to include them, but B, it's about the fact that, you know, we're making an old school trance track, but at the end of the day, this is my track. This is, you know, what me as a producer throwing elements that I like and making a track inspired by something, not trying to copy something. We're trying to be inspired by something. And what better way to do that than to take your inspiration, start building a track, but make sure you include the elements you like, you know, patterns you like and sound and, you know, stories and narratives that you like and throw them in there. Which means A, I'm going to throw Supersaws, and B, you know I'm going to make them kind of a primary component of the track, a key character of the track, which is why we solo them over here, and they just take everything over because, you know, not a lot of uplifting trance tracks do that, not a lot of old school trance tracks do that, just letting the Supersaws be the main character there, and you know I'm going to do that. It's giving you your Supersaws, layer number 1. Let's actually go through it over here. Because I don't know where they're all balances. There's no filters. Layer number 1. Out of Spire. Serum. 90s era. What more could you want? Layer number 2. Just slightly more full, wider. Let's layer them on top of one another, actually, so we know what it sounds like. There you go. 1176. OTT and a bunch of other things, right? Things that matter. On top of, what is it, Vintage Verb? You know it. And something that I've been getting a lot better at doing, but not necessarily better at doing, but doing more, is probably just taking your top element of your Supersaws, which would be your highest note, We'll throw in this and just making a sustained lead layer on it because it just makes sure that it cuts through. It gives you a melody to focus on because at the end of the day, something that it took me a long time to realize is that the supersaws add a melody, right? The top note adds the melody that I always hear when I'm making a track and I hear the supersaws playing. I hear the melody of the top note. But at the end of the day, you want it to cut through a little bit more. So you throw in a single note lead on there. Ah, lovely. And you know what? I'm not the type of person to sponsor, not to sponsor, but like to shout out because I'm not sponsored. I don't want, I try not to mention things because, I like mentioning good things about things and not bad things. So, when you give people a shout, it just makes it feel like other people are being left out. This Luke Bond trance pack just made, if I'm being completely honest, it actually changed everything. Not only was it a nice trance pack to work on a few IDs and stuff, but I go through these sounds so often. They're in Atomos, they're in City of Rain, and I've been using them so much more that it's such a nice pack. If you like Supersaws, if you like the trance sound, you don't even need to like the trance genre, but if you like the trance sound, Supersaws and basses and pads and a bunch of stuff, amazing pack. If you guys haven't noticed, a lot of things were from that pack, and they really just kind of elevated my producing, not because they're so good and I couldn't do it, but because it gave me a bank of sounds that I consistently reach for, that I can just grab and that I know I like and that I've started using in a lot of tracks. So there you go, all together sounding like this. Lovely sidechain. Nope. 100 times better. So nice. Let's listen to that one more time. Again, with the rolling bass, with the hi-hats coming in to give you the progression, and the harmonies and the supersaws. Probably one of my favorite sections of the track. Actually, everything after this is one of my favorites. This is one of them for sure. Vocal swell. Vocal harmonies. And the supersaws are going to be your main player. And this is where it matters so much that the supersaws contribute to the melody. Because I've said before, I love just sustain melodies like this. Let me mute this sidechain because it should be off. That's the reverb. Sustain melodies like these are my favorites. I just cannot. This is where I talk about the track being subjectively one of my favorites because this is my sound. I love this sound, which makes it so hard to make things, tracks like other artists that don't excel at this. But when it comes to melodies like these are like my favorite melodies. There's so many tracks that I can make that have melodies like these. And there's so many tracks that I like that don't have melodies like these that I struggle to make. But if there's one thing I can make and I love making, it's this. I mean, it's just beautiful. It sounds so simple, but it just delivers everything you could want. So again, it becomes more important to emphasize the melody of the supersaw with that layer, because without it, the melody just doesn't cut through. You're listening to it, and in the past, my inexperienced producer self would say, "Hey, I know I'm listening to the melody good," but adding that layer just really makes it cut through, and it just gives it what it needs at the end of the day, and allows you to again make the supersaws the main player. It delivers the melody that you need, vocal notes to kind of transcend you. Harmonies coming in. This is beautiful. Ad lib. Let's throw this in here. Oh, where's your atmosphere? Throw your pads. Oh. Another demonstration of what I could do if I had a vocalist, present, because adding these ad-libs just makes all the difference. I will have to admit the pack makes it easier because maybe in the moment, if I had a vocalist in front of me, I wouldn't think, hey, let's record some ad-libs so I can use them later. It would probably just be something that, hey, if I have them available, I know they fit in there. But even then, just a demonstration of what I can do if I have these tools available to me. Absolutely beautiful. Another one of my favorite areas of the track. Another one of my favorite areas coming in right here, because in my typical self, just go an octave up. Just go an octave up. Throw in that sequence. Throw in the bass, the build-up, which kind of gives you offbeat rhythm. Definitely splits up kind of what you feel, what feels like kind of a sustained sustained bar feel out of things like the chords, which you just feel the 4 beats in. 8 beats. So you throw in the offbeat build-up. Oh man, I cannot help myself right now. Melodies right there. You actually get inverted melodies out of the synth and the Supersaw on the lead. One goes down, they both go up, sorry. But this one comes down, but you add this note down here to make it feel like it has unique movement. Well, it's tough to get right. If you take this away, it just doesn't really sit right. This one you do take away. But together. And then you go back down from this octave down here, C, G, G sharp, G, right into your buildup. My goodness. Are these bass notes? I don't think so. But my goodness. Right as the buildup picks up, you drop one of the pads. Harmonies and swells go away, which by the way you'll hear right here. Just that snare buildup. You build it up a little bit. Pad. Hear that melody. And you get something that I just hear in my head. You know what? I'm gonna cut to a different area because I don't want the driver issue to be messed up in case something gets messed up. So cut to a different area right here. By the way, it's the end of I just finished recording the remainder of the breakdown. So if you guys saw my energy levels, just I transcended, which is why I might sound so off in this area. But I was already getting off. But this is what I was going to mention. I was going to open a different project file, and hopefully the audio isn't giving you any issues, because I had a feeling opening a different project file would affect some things with Audacity recording. But this is the other big switch up we do, where in the drop it's something that I just heard. Where going into the second drop, I should say, in the build up it's something I just heard. Going into the second drop, you just cut the sounds completely, and you give it some offbeat spacing that just kind of holds on to you for an extra split second and gives you, if you're completely immersed and you don't see it coming, it just kind of gets you right in the heart, giving you something that sounds like this. Every time I forget it's there and I'm completely immersed, it gets to me. But that's the other switch up you had. You have the switch up over here. And the other big switch up you have is right here, where you just get the offbeat kind of pauses into the drop. I knew it was something that was easily going to be done in the mastering file, so I just saved it for that instead of doing it directly in the DAW. Because I mean, I could have done it directly in the DAW, but you switch things around, so I just did it in the master file. But again, one of my favorite things about this track is that switch up right there. So I did need to open the master file to show you guys that. Back to the breakdown, and we're back. And yeah, I just heard that in my head, and you listen to it, and if you don't see it coming when you're completely immersed in the track and listening to it, it gets me right in the heart every single time when I'm completely immersed. And again, an artistic switch up at that. Oh man. Into your drop. Again, Supersaw is the main player. This is one of the more artistic things that I like about this track. Is that, instead of going back to the melody and going back to the plucks, just let the Supersaws play out, and it gives it such nice movement. Where's my sidechain? Oh my goodness. It's just this. I remember I had this to start because you let the Supersaws play out. You really just bask in them. And when you think it's going to change, you just move forward with it. The kick comes in, the bass comes in, I actually can't help myself right now. I'm losing it. Here's your melody. You know the pluck's gonna come back in. We don't have your hi-hats, we don't have your claps. You filter the pluck. More melodies and harmonies and swells right here. Drop the things. Oh my god. Oh. Everything in full force. Supersaws, pads, all the lead layers with the rolling bass melody. Fills, vocals, hi-hats are in there, and everything is at full force. But it gets even better. So probably my actual favorite area. 3 distinct melodies. You have the Supersaw melody, the lead melody, and the plucks that go with the vocals come back in, and you get the inversions. Oh, I'm tuning out, everyone. The review's over. Review's over, by the way. Top of the vocal swells. This is the thumbnail. Typical trance fashion. Drop the drums, get a build up into the outro. Oh my goodness. A little bit of movement, by the way. Without the sequence, the outro feels distinct to the intro. I mentioned this in my intro-outro video. So even though we go down and we go back up with the hi-hats, the fact that the sequence isn't there still makes it feel like we're ultimately at a more stripped version. What do we have? 1 pad layer, no sequence again. Drums, kick, hi-hats. But at the end of the day, after this peak right here, we go down, we go up, and then we go back down. Just the kick and the pads. Last thing I want to mention is that this was a winter track at the end of the day. If it were a summer track, the drums would be a bigger player here, and I would have extended them through the outro. But at the end of the day, this was a winter track, and I wanted to have a little bit more emotion and feel to it. So you just ending with just the pads reminds you that this is a winter track, versus had you extended this, again, it would feel like a summer track. You know, the drums and the rhythm are the main player, but in the winter, the immersion and the feel are the main player. So winter track, not me, us. Ending with the pads, by the way, sidechain on a filter to swell down, so you still get the rhythm and the movement, but it goes away and you really just are immersed in the pads. Oh. 6-minute track, there you go. Really let it play down all the way. That's why the outro is so long. And that is not me, us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying anything more about this track. This video's over. I basked in it. I appreciated everything. This video's over. There's your outro. The video's over. I'm not saying anything else. I'll take 15 seconds. Biggest thing you want to take away is, number 1, old school trance. Number 2, personal approach. Number 3, demonstrating what I can do with vocals had I had a vocalist available. So even though they're spliced vocals, you really just do everything you can with them just to demonstrate your abilities there. Vocals, pads, leads, going by feel, supersaws, and my PC's not liking that. Supersaws are the main character. That is that personal approach to you. You invert it, throw in the plugs. It gives you 3 distinct melodies, one of them being a high note supersaw. Winter track with the outro without the drums. That is not me, us. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. If you like the track, if you don't like the track, let me know. Let me know what you think about Supersaws. If you like Supersaws, if you don't like Supersaws, shout out to Luke Bond for the trance pack for Serum 2. 2 packs that I got on a good deal for that I really like. I use for all the time. There's your old school trance track. 1176 made a big difference. Let me know if you like what I did. Let me know if you picked up on the switch ups, right? If you liked or hated the switch ups right here. If you didn't thought it sounded off key, or if you thought this part sounded weird right here before the drop, which I broke down in after that. And any thoughts you guys have, leave them in the comments. The next track out in December, in March, sometime in March, I need to upload for distribution. Drum and bass track, I'll mention that as a sneak peek. Why not? Because my energy is basically all over the place. Drum and bass track coming out with more splice vocals. More track reviews coming. Those are going to be in the next few videos for sure. Other than that, don't forget to leave any questions you have in the comments. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. But other than that, that is all I have for you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.